So today we're diving into a really core challenge for, well, any leader today: uncertainty. Things change so fast, culture feels fragmented, digital acceleration. It just makes certainty feel, frankly, impossible.
Absolutely. And yet clarity.
Hmm.
Clarity is something people desperately need. That's what the sources we looked at really highlight.
Yeah, it feels like there's a shift happening. People aren't just looking for, smart strategies or metrics anymore. They're craving direction that actually means something.
They need the why.
Exactly. Not just how fast we're going.
And that really tees up the main argument in these materials. Vision isn't some kind of optional extra, a nice to have. It's presented as a fundamental survival skill.
Okay.
True leadership, according to these sources, it's not ultimately about your job title or your authority on the org chart. It's about your ability to see reality differently through maybe a counterintuitive lens, one that's anchored in, well, conviction.
Seeing what others miss.
That said, great leaders consistently spot unseen potential.
All right, so that sets up our mission for this deep dive then. We're going to analyze this contrast, leading by sight, which is, limited by the hard facts, the fear, what's right in front of you, versus leading by vision, which is anchored more in promise, in conviction. The big question is, how can two leaders look at the exact same situation, the same data, and one sees, I don't know, a dead end, while the other sees a starting point?
A graveyard versus a harvest field.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So let's start with sight, leading strictly by sight. That means reacting to what's immediately visible. The daily stuff, the risks, the number.
The quarterly results, the competitor's latest move, yeah.
Yeah.
And this kind of sight-based leadership, it almost always defaults to, well, maybe panic, certainly reaction, and often just managing decline.
It sounds exhausting.
It is exhausting.
Yeah.
Because you're always just responding to outside pressures. Sight sees the rubble, the broken pieces. Sight says, uh-oh, revenue dropped 10%. It's vital for day-to-day operations, sure, but as a North Star for strategy, it's terrible.
Okay, so then what is vision in this context? Because it's clearly not just the mission statement on the wall.
Right, definitely not that. Or, the super detailed 5-year plan. Those are really tools of sight, of strategy. Vision, especially the way it's talked about here, it's more like a revelation.
A revelation? How so?
It's this deep, sometimes painful realization of the gap between how things are right now and how they could be. And often it comes out of brokenness. Think about Nehemiah in the historical text.
Okay.
He wasn't initially planning the wall rebuild. He was weeping over the fact that the walls were broken.
Yeah.
And that intense, emotional, convicted response, that's what birthed the vision to fix them.
I like that distinction. We do tend to mash vision and planning together. So you're saying they work together, but they're different roles.
Exactly. Vision answers the big why and what for questions, the purpose, the promise, the plan. That answers how.
And
Without that clear, deeply felt vision, your plans might be super efficient, but they could be efficiently taking you in completely the wrong direction. We're all great at optimizing things, right? But we might just be optimizing our path to, well, to nowhere useful.
Okay, that really ups the stakes. Let's make it concrete. Say, your main market suddenly shrinks by 20%. Big problem.
Big problem.
The leader, working just by sight, sees a crisis, right? They probably panic, start slashing budgets, worried about just surviving.
Standard reaction. Fear-based.
But the leader with this kind of conviction-based vision, they might see the same 20% drop, but view it as, what? A catalyst.
Exactly. An invitation, maybe?
Yeah.
A chance to fundamentally rethink things, innovate past the competition, maybe even leapfrog the whole industry. Same facts, totally different lens.
Which brings us to a potential trap you mentioned. Confusing just having knowledge, data, market research, facts with having vision.
Yes, this is crucial. Knowledge is important, obviously. You need the data.
Yeah.
But knowledge on its own, without that strategic insight, that conviction, it's incomplete. Often it just leads to analysis paralysis.
Right, you've got all the facts, but you're stuck. No clear path forward. Because knowledge is inherently about what is or what was.
It's limited by the present reality. It focuses on human limitations, resource scarcity.
So let's translate. If we're talking to a leader who isn't operating from a, say, explicitly faith-based perspective, what's the strategic equivalent of this divine perspective or faith? How does that work in a secular boardroom?
That's a vital question. The strategic translation is about holding an absolutely unshakable conviction in a future possibility, a future promise.
Yeah.
Even when the current numbers, the current resources, just don't seem to back it up. It's believing in a potential for a non-linear breakthrough. Something beyond just incremental improvement. seeing untapped potential that transcends the immediate data points. Maybe it's like having radical strategic empathy for where the market will be, not just where it is now. It lets you see past the constraints everyone else is focused on.
Okay, that helps frame it. Now, to really bring this home, we have to look at that core case study from the sources. Moses sending the 12 spies, the leaders, into Canaan. Numbers 13 and 14.
Yes.
And the key point there is this was supposed to be reconnaissance, right? Fact-finding, preparing for action. It wasn't meant to be a vote on whether the promise itself was valid.
Exactly. And what's so striking is that the facts themselves, they weren't really debated. All 12 spies came back agreeing on the basic data.
What did they agree on?
Well, the land was amazing, fertile. It really did flow with milk and honey, as the saying goes.
Yeah.
But they also all agreed the people living there were powerful, seemed huge. The cities were like fortresses. And they all saw these giants, the Anakites. The visible facts were pretty daunting.
Okay, same facts. But then the perception, that's where it split dramatically. 10 of the 12 took those facts, filtered them through their own fear, their own self-doubt, and delivered what the sources call this devastating report of the 10.
Which immediately created what's called the grasshopper mentality.
Explain that. It's more than just fear.
Right, yeah. It's like a strategic group version of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
The quote that just nails it is haunting. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them.
Wow. So their internal feeling of being small.
Exactly. Their fear, their sense of inadequacy, it completely poisoned how they assessed the external reality. They projected their smallness onto the enemy, and that led to total despair, panic spreading through everyone.
That is the absolute core of site-based leadership, isn't it? Fear makes you shrink your view of yourself.
And if you see yourself as a grasshopper, guess what? You assume everyone else sees you that way too, especially your challenges or competitors. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The perception becomes the reality.
Okay, but I need to push back here a little. Because sometimes, for a leader today, maybe you are the grasshopper. Your startup genuinely is tiny compared to the industry giant. Where's the line between realistic assessment and this negative grasshopper mentality?
That's a fair and really important challenge. The crucial difference is the excluded variable, the 10 spies. They're being realistic, yes, but only based on human factors, the size of the walls, the size of the people, measurable stuff.
Right.
Caleb and Joshua, the other 2 spies, they were also realistic. They didn't deny the giants were there, but they included that nonlinear potential we talked about earlier. They filtered the same facts through the conviction of the original promise, the bigger picture.
So they acknowledged the giants.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But their conclusion was completely different. Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it. They weren't being naive. They just added a factor the others ignored. Their key insight was basically, their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. The giants were real, but beatable, because the promise was bigger than the problem.
And the result of ignoring that perspective, it was just catastrophic. It really drives home how much perspective matters.
Totally. Because the majority of the people bought into the fear-based report. That whole generation, the ones who'd seen miracles getting out of Egypt. They ended up dying in the wilderness. 40 years of wandering.
40 years. It wasn't just missing the goal. It was a complete waste of potential, of time, of life. Their collective viewpoint literally determined their destiny.
It's such a stark lesson in, you could say, organizational alignment or maybe misalignment. The facts didn't doom them. Their interpretation of the facts did. And think about this. Even Joshua and Caleb, the ones who saw it right, they still had to wander for those 40 years with everyone else. It shows how costly it can be to have conviction when the crowd is driven by fear.
Wow. Okay, let's pivot then. Let's get really practical for the listener. Someone hearing this might be thinking, okay, I recognize that grasshopper default in me or in my team. How do you actually move from that default setting to, let's call it, that Caleb confidence? It's clearly not just something you're born with.
No, definitely not. It's a cultivated discipline. The sources suggest vision starts with seeing differently, yes, but it matures through a kind of disciplined process. You see, then you discern, then you declare, and finally you deploy.
See, discern, deploy. Okay.
And we often jump straight from seeing a problem to declaring a solution or deploying a plan. But that middle step, discern, that's where the real discipline is. It means perceiving the underlying reality, the potential, not just the surface-level data or the immediate threat.
So how do we train ourselves, train our teams to get better at discerning? What are the practical steps?
Well, let's start with the discipline of alignment. The sources suggest a leader's job here is twofold. First, you personally have to see the unseen reality. There's that striking image from 2 Kings 6, Elisha praying for his servant's eyes to be opened.
Right. To see the chariots of fire surrounding them, the hidden protection.
Exactly. You, as the leader, have to know with conviction that there are hidden resources, unseen potentials, maybe forces working in your favor that aren't obvious on the balance sheet.
That's a powerful image. What's the modern, maybe secular version of seeing chariots of fire? Is it spotting an underserved market niche? Or seeing a tech shift coming before anyone else?
It's exactly that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Recognizing non-obvious, non-linear potential. It could be spotting that emerging trend everyone else dismisses as a fad,
Yes.
or maybe it's seeing untapped talent within your own team that's been overlooked because you only measured past performance.
Okay, so first see it yourself. What's the second part of alignment?
The second part is, metaphorically speaking, praying, Lord, open their eyes so they can see too. Your focus shifts. It's not just about managing the facts anymore. It's about helping your team perceive the same possibility you see, sharing the conviction.
Got it. What's the next discipline?
Discipline 2 is humility and planning. This is where we hit that tightrope balance. Real vision, the kind described here, is faith-informed realism. It's not just pie-in-the-sky optimism.
It's a grounded hope.
Yes. Look at Nehemiah again. He gets the conviction, the vision, he weeps. But what does he do next? He travels to Jerusalem, he inspects the broken walls at night, secretly assessing the actual damage. That's meticulous planning. He secures resources from the king.
Right, the practical side. You can't just dream it, you have to build it. Logistics matter.
Hugely. And sources point out, when Nehemiah faced threats while rebuilding, he didn't just pray. He said, we prayed to our God, and we posted a guard day and night. Conviction and strategy.
Pray and post a guard. I like that.
It's the essential partnership. You trust like it all depends on God or the universe or the mission's purpose. And you plan and work like it all depends on you. You can't just wish away the need for a solid plan.
But hold on, isn't faith-informed realism just a fancy term for good risk management? How is it different from a sharp CEO doing a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats?
It's different because the driver changes. A SWOT analysis done through the lens of pure sight often leads to defensively managing the threats, maybe cautiously probing the weaknesses, playing not to lose.
Okay.
A plan developed under the lens of vision, using the same facts from that SWOT, is fundamentally driven by seizing the opportunity, even if it involves navigating the threat zone. The analysis informs how you move, but the core conviction defines why you're moving and what prize you're aiming for. The risk calculation changes because the potential reward feels bigger, more certain.
That makes sense. The why changes the risk tolerance. Okay, discipline 3.
Pathway clarity. This trips up so many leaders. We feel paralyzed because we think vision needs to give us the entire roadmap, detailed turn-by-turn directions from A to Z.
Yeah, you want the full picture before you take the first step.
And that's a trap. Real vision, biblical or strategic, rarely provides the full map up front. What it does provide is enough clarity for the next faithful step.
The next right move.
Exactly. Think of Abraham in the stories. He went out not knowing where he was going. He knew the destination, the promise, but he didn't have the detailed itinerary. If you wait for 100% clarity on the whole journey, you'll never leave the starting block. You trust the ultimate destination and execute the step right in front of you.
That requires a lot of trust. Okay, one last check before we wrap up the motive. The sources warn about vision being used for manipulation. How do we spot the difference?
That's critical. True vision, the kind that inspires people and achieves great things, it's always an invitation to co-own the future, to contribute, often to sacrifice together for a greater purpose. It empowers people.
And manipulation.
Manipulation is the opposite. It punishes disagreement, coerces people into complying, and usually serves leaders' ego, status, or personal gain. If your vision demands blind, unquestioning obedience, chances are it's not vision, it's control.
Okay, good distinction. So let's bring this all together.
Yeah, if you tie it all back, the core message seems inescapable. Leadership isn't ultimately about the authority you hold. It's about the perspective you carry and cultivate. Your perception, whether you instinctively see grasshoppers or giants, problems or potential, that perception will always set the ceiling for what you and your organization can achieve.
So here's the challenge for you listening right now. Take a minute to audit your current situation. Where are you facing real uncertainty? Maybe it's a career decision, a family challenge, a big shift in your organization. And ask yourself, what's my default report? Am I leaning first on the report of human limitation, the visible data, the fears, the scarcity?
Or are you intentionally choosing to trust the report rooted in conviction? In that belief and nonlinear potential in the
Uh,
promise, even when the facts look grim, which report gets your primary trust?
Yeah, which one are you acting on?
And maybe here's a final thought to wrestle with. Imagine the future. The bigger picture for your current struggle was suddenly revealed. Let's say God, or fate, or just profound insight showed you the ultimate positive outcome, the promise waiting on the other side.
Okay.
Would you actually recognize it? Would you embrace it?
Okay.
Or would you resist it because accepting that bigger promise means you have to let go of, maybe even dismantle, the careful, site-based plan you've already invested so much time and energy in perfecting? Would the promise disrupt your plan too much?